This peculiar story tells of a scholar named Li, who in his daily life enjoyed practicing martial arts and often went out to spar with others. One day, he returned from outside, intending to visit a close friend and fellow student. Upon arrival, Li learned that his friend had suddenly passed away. His friend's wife tearfully explained that her husband had been harmed and killed by an evil Taoist priest. The wife recounted that a few nights prior, several ghostly apparitions suddenly appeared in their house. Both husband and wife were startled awake in terror. These ghosts wandered through the house, looking extremely terrifying, with wide mouths, long tongues, and vacant white eyes, causing the couple to huddle in fear on their bed until dawn. The next day, a Taoist priest arrived at their door, claiming he could exorcise demons and evil spirits. The couple immediately invited him into their home to perform his rituals. The Taoist priest pointed his magic sword, and wherever he pointed, a human-shaped shadow appeared. After a series of actions, he declared that all demons and evil spirits had been completely eradicated. After completing his work, the Taoist priest demanded 2,000 taels of gold as payment. This was clearly a blatant act of extortion. However, the couple had no way to produce such a sum. Unable to get the money, the Taoist priest uttered threats, then angrily left. He said that in 3 days, they would surely suffer from festering sores and die. His friend, in anger, cursed the priest. At first, the two thought the Taoist priest was just trying to scare them, but unexpectedly, on the 3rd day, his friend suddenly suffered unbearable abdominal pain. Not long after, the friend's abdomen became ulcerated and he died. His wife wept bitterly over her husband's corpse, blood staining her clothes. Li was furious upon hearing the story. He stood before his friend's coffin, his eyes filled with hatred, vowing to eliminate the evil Taoist priest to avenge his friend. After learning the evil Taoist priest's whereabouts, he went there, kicked open the door, and stormed in. The two immediately lunged at each other without a word. Although the Taoist priest possessed powerful magic, his martial arts skills were poor. Li delivered a powerful punch, knocking the Taoist priest down on the spot. The Taoist priest was beaten black and blue, continuously begging for his life. Finally, Li delivered a strong kick to the Taoist priest, making him collapse completely. After that, he dragged the half-dead Taoist priest to the magistrate's yamen, intending to tell the official everything to punish him. But unexpectedly, the Taoist priest had already bribed the magistrate. Instead, Li was judged by the official and thrown into the dungeon. In prison, he always sat with his arms crossed, head bowed. He never expected his good intentions to lead him to this situation. While contemplating, he unknowingly drifted off to sleep. In his dream, he heard someone calling out in the darkness. The voice sounded like the Taoist priest. Opening his eyes, he indeed saw the Taoist priest standing right in front of him. He sprang up, raising his fist, intending to teach him another lesson. However, Li didn't know what magic the Taoist priest had cast. He only felt his body sinking. The Taoist priest extended his hand, telling him to enter his world in the vase. After that, Li felt as if he was falling into a bottomless abyss, unable to control himself. A round circle of light appeared above his head, becoming smaller and smaller. Li looked up, feeling himself being pulled far away, until he touched the ground. He lost consciousness for a moment before he could regain it. Opening his eyes, he found himself lying on hard ground, surrounded by many other pairs of feet. He stood up in a panic, looking at the people around him, realizing he was in another world, surrounded by many people. A kind-faced man told him not to be afraid, that they wouldn't harm him, then helped him up and gave him water to drink. Lee took the bowl of water, then composed himself and asked the man again to confirm that he was in the world in the vase. They said that the Taoist priest was originally an evil sorcerer who had learned his dark magic from who knew where. It was said that a precious vase was in a deep mountain temple. He had found a way to steal its key. After snatching the valuable vase, he traveled everywhere, swindling money under the guise of subjugating demons and eliminating evil spirits. He would throw those who disobeyed him into the vase. He would also accept money to help others eliminate rivals. The world inside the vase was like a small realm. He forced those people to cultivate the land, providing him with food. He also frequently tricked beautiful women into the vase. Every month, on the 1st and 15th day, he would enter the vase to indulge himself. The world inside the vase was entirely under his control. As they were talking, thunder suddenly roared above their heads. The onlookers fearfully clutched their heads and ran, scrambling into thatched huts. The kind-faced man said, "It has begun." The kind-faced man warned him that the evil sorcerer would use tricks to punish those who disobeyed until they went mad or died, advising him to be careful. As he spoke, it began to rain heavily. Lee wanted to enter a thatched hut to take shelter from the rain, but no one dared to open their door for him. He stood in the pouring rain, trying to knock on doors. Left with no choice, Lee had to crawl into a rock crevice for shelter. Rain poured down on him, chilling him to the bone. He shivered in the crevice, trembling from the cold. Just as the rain finally stopped, a strong wind suddenly rose, accompanied by sand and stones, whipping at him painfully, causing him to shrink back and cover his face with his hands. After the wind ceased, heavy snow fell continuously. The weather kept changing erratically, lasting 3 days before stopping. Lee huddled in the snow, his entire body covered in white snow. The others all believed he was surely dead. They slowly approached where Lee was sitting, wondering if he was still alive. But unexpectedly, he managed to stubbornly survive. He slowly crawled out of the snowdrift, completely unyielding. Then he raised his head and cursed the evil sorcerer, calling him a cowardly turtle. He challenged him to enter the vase and engage in a fight to the death. Enraged, the evil sorcerer ordered the others to gang up and kill Lee, offering a reward to anyone who took his life. They would see the sunlight again. Everyone wanted to regain their freedom and rushed forward. Lee fought alone against the crowd, but was not at a disadvantage. He fought back fiercely, knocking many people down. Lee knocked down everyone, except for one person whose martial arts skills were not inferior to his. He knocked down many opponents, but one person still stood firm. The two then fought fiercely for several more dozens of rounds. Lee was no match and was decapitated. The man picked up Lee's head, raising it to report his success to the Taoist priest. The evil sorcerer kept his promise and released the highly skilled martial artist outside. The man holding Lee's head looked up at the light, walking out of the vase. Unexpectedly, as soon as he was outside, the man acted. He lunged at the evil sorcerer, forcefully throwing Lee's head at him. After that, the man knocked down the evil sorcerer, forcing him to release the people trapped in the vase. Then, he strangled him and smashed the vase. The people trapped in the vase emerged one by one. The man then erected a tombstone for Lee. It turned out that Lee knew he couldn't escape, so he had planned during their fierce battle for the highly skilled martial artist to win, so he would have the opportunity to eliminate the evil sorcerer and rid the people of this menace. This peculiar story is about a scholar named Lee, who wasn't a bad person, but he had a harmful vice that often caused trouble for others. His bad habit was to show off his eloquence and quick wit. No matter what he encountered, he had to say a few unconventional things to demonstrate his unique nature. One day, Lee was walking down the street when he saw a legless beggar lying on the roadside, begging for food. He looked utterly pitiful and miserable. Passers-by who saw the beggar's plight were moved with compassion. Many were about to stop and give him some money. Seeing a kind person about to give money, Lee held out his fan to stop them, advising them not to be too quick to trust, lest they be deceived by the pitiful appearance. He loudly told the crowd that the beggar was probably faking his disability, putting on a play to deceive people's kindness and money. Hearing Lee's words, the people who had intended to give money lost their charitable intentions. They thought they had almost been fooled and quickly left. The beggar looked up in despair, not understanding why Lee would speak so recklessly, destroying his last means of survival, even though they had no enmity between them. Lee, thinking he was clever, even advised the beggar to find an honest living. The beggar could only warn him that doing such evil would bring about retribution. Upon returning home, he gleefully recounted his triumph to his wife, proud that he had exposed a street swindler in front of everyone. His wife worriedly advised him not to comment on things he wasn't sure about. What if the person was truly in distress? Wouldn't you have harmed the life? She said. That night, the weather suddenly changed. A strong wind rose, and it began to snow. A fierce snowstorm raged throughout the cold night. The next morning, Lee went out for a walk again. He saw a crowd gathered at the exact spot where the beggar had been sitting the day before, and he became curious. He thought the beggar was up to his tricks again, intending to go up and expose him once more. But as he got closer, Lee was utterly terrified. The beggar had frozen to death from hunger and cold. His body was crudely covered with a torn straw mat. His mouth was full of snow, perhaps because he was so hungry. Witnessing the tragic sight, Lee suddenly felt a strange itching in his throat. He tried to cough but couldn't spit anything out or swallow. When he got home, Lee was completely unable to speak. His wife frantically asked what was wrong, but he could only mumble in vain, unable to utter a single word. His worried wife took her husband everywhere to find a good doctor. They visited many famous physicians in the area, hoping to find a cure for the strange illness. After careful examination, the doctors could not find the cause of this peculiar ailment. He was healthy, yet he couldn't speak. Examining his mouth, the doctors all found his tongue to be intact, with no signs of anything abnormal. Yet they couldn't understand why he was unable to make a sound. An old master said that this illness was not caused by a mortal hand, advising him to try another way, perhaps to the underworld, to seek an explanation. The old master introduced Lee and his wife to a friend of his. He told them that if they mentioned his name, the friend would surely lend a hand. Lee and his wife brought gifts and went to the home of the old master's friend. A man with a dignified and ethereal appearance opened the door for them. After the wife explained the whole situation, the man agreed to go to the underworld to find out for them. He told the couple to sit and wait for news. With that, the man sat down in a cross-legged meditative position, closed his eyes, and began to concentrate his spirit, preparing to depart his body for the underworld. After only a moment, his body went limp and his head slumped forward. He looked exactly like a person in a deep sleep, his soul having left his body to wander. Lee and his wife dared not disturb him. They could only hold their breath and wait in silence. Both were extremely worried and nervous. After about the time it takes to drink half a cup of tea, the man suddenly woke up, his expression returning to normal as if nothing had happened. Lee's wife quickly asked if he had found out anything about her husband's strange illness. The man sighed, saying he had. All this misfortune was due to Lee's uncontrolled mouth, which spoke recklessly and harmed people. He said that he had a close friend who, after death, became a functionary in the underworld. This friend had taught him the method to enter the underworld. Upon reaching the underworld, he met his friend again and asked for information about Lee's case, wondering why he had suddenly fallen ill. The friend, a functionary in the underworld, said that Lee's soul was indeed there, being punished for the sin of not cultivating a virtuous mouth, for speaking recklessly and harming people. Immediately after, the functionary friend led him into the torture room, where souls who had sinned in the mortal world were imprisoned and tormented. There, he was horrified to see Lee's soul undergoing a gruesome punishment. His tongue was hooked with an iron hook and hung high up. The functionary explained that this person specialized in spreading rumors, causing discord, and even causing death. Therefore, he had to suffer the extreme punishment of having his tongue pulled. The functionary friend added that for such people, words are sharper than knives and swords. If they do not repent, they will surely enter the hell of tongue pulling. After hearing the story, Lee and his wife were terrified, breaking out in cold sweat. The man advised him to cultivate a virtuous mind and be mindful of his words from now on. From that day on, Lee rarely went out. Whenever he went out and encountered something, he would only stand and watch in silence, not daring to meddle with a single word. Every time he came across an incident, he was so scared that he would quickly cover his mouth with his hand and leave. Lee had truly learned a memorable lesson and never dared to speak recklessly again.
It's your move.
This peculiar story is about a retired general. After leaving his official post and returning to his hometown, he lived a leisurely, carefree life, often going sightseeing with his servant. Seeing his servant's respectful demeanor, he politely said that he had retired and told his servant to simply treat him as an elder. His greatest pleasure was to find scenic spots every day to drink wine and play chess. One day, he went to a pavilion to enjoy the scenery. He had arranged to meet a close friend to play a few relaxing games of chess together. When his friend arrived, they immediately began their match. To sit amidst beautiful nature, enjoying wine and a battle of wits over the chessboard was his great joy. The two friends were absorbed in the game, and the match was very tense. Their moves were both very cautious, making the atmosphere incredibly strained. While the two were deeply focused, he suddenly noticed a young man hastily walking up the mountain path towards the pavilion. When the man got closer, he saw that he looked extremely haggard. His clothes were torn and dirty, and his face was gaunt and pale like a person with a serious illness. The young man said nothing, only stood silently to the side, intently watching every move on the chessboard. After playing a few games, he felt a little tired. He stood up to stretch his muscles and bones after sitting still for a long time. Seeing that the young man also seemed to be a chess enthusiast, he invited him to play a few games in his place to pass the time while he rested. The young man sat down at the table, continuing the match with the general's friend. However, his chess skills were not great, and he lost a few games in a row. The more he lost, the more flustered and uncomfortable the young man became. He started to get annoyed, his expression becoming strangely tense. The general invited him to have some wine and rest, but he refused. After playing more than 10 games, he only managed to win 1 or 2, looking very distressed. What was strange was that, for half a day, the young man never left, not even once, to attend to personal needs, which the general found very odd. When the two were in a stalemate, the young man suddenly stiffened, his face showing signs of extreme pain. He unexpectedly stood up, knelt before the general, and repeatedly kowtowed, begging for help. The general was surprised, thinking it was just a game and there was no need for such a gesture. The young man pleaded with the general to say a word to his horse groom, asking him not to shackle his neck and to let him finish this one game of chess before he would leave immediately. Hearing these strange words, the general immediately ordered his servant to return home to check on the situation, instructing him to tell the horse groom not to cause trouble for others. The servant immediately obeyed, rushing on horseback back to the estate to check on the horse groom as his master had instructed. Upon arrival, he learned that the horse groom had been in a coma for 2 days. It turned out that every so often, the groom's soul would descend to the underworld to act as a soul-collecting messenger. The servant quickly relayed his master's words, saying that the master had instructed the groom not to cause trouble for the young man who was on the mountain. Back with the old general, the scholar had stood up, his face no longer in pain. He clasped his hands in thanks for the general's help. After that, he calmly sat back down at the chessboard, continuing the match he had left unfinished with the general's friend, seemingly without any more worries. The final game of chess ended, and he lost again. Immediately after, his body suddenly became faint and then vanished into thin air. It was only then that everyone realized he was not human. Filled with questions, the general didn't understand why he had encountered the ghost of the young man. He returned to his estate, feeling he needed to get to the bottom of the story. When he returned to the estate, the horse groom had just woken up from his 2-day coma. The general immediately summoned him to ask about it. The general asked the horse groom about the background of the scholar he had met on the mountain, wanting to know why that ghost had appeared there. The groom explained that he was a chess ghost, originally a scholar from a small town nearby. His whole life he had been obsessed with the world of Go chess. From a young age, this scholar was addicted to Go chess, reading many strategy books, but his skills were not impressive, and he often lost his matches. Because his skill was so poor, no one wanted to play with him. He had to spend a lot of money to hire others to play chess with him to satisfy his passion. His father, fearing that his son would squander the family fortune, often locked him in his room, not allowing him to go out and socialize or waste time. But he always found a way to escape, to find people to play chess with. Before long, he had almost completely spent the family's entire fortune. His father, furious with his unfilial son, fell seriously ill and passed away. But even as his father was dying, he was still engrossed in his chessboard. After his death, the king of hell saw that he was unfilial and without virtue, so he shortened his lifespan and banished him to the hell of hungry ghosts as punishment. Even banished in hell, he did not repent. His mind was always on chess games. He even drew a chessboard on the ground to play by himself. 7 years later, the king of hell granted a general amnesty, giving a group of scholars a chance to be reincarnated. This scholar was among those who were pardoned. But to his surprise, on his way to be reincarnated, he escaped. He still wandered everywhere, looking for people to play chess with. The king of hell was furious and ordered his demon officials to capture him. That day, when he saw the general playing chess, he went over to watch. Just then, the horse groom, who was on patrol, used an iron chain to shackle him and escort him back to the underworld. After leaving the general's location, the scholar was captured by the demon officials, banished to Avicii Hell, and forever lost his chance to be reincarnated. The general, upon hearing the story, couldn't help but sigh in sorrow. He never imagined there could be a person so obsessed who would lose his chance at reincarnation for a chess game. What a pity. This peculiar story tells of a yaksha who spent its days simply eating and entertaining itself with its kind. This monotonous life made it feel utterly bored. It yearned to escape its comfort zone. One day, one of its kind asked why it didn't come to eat corpses. The yaksha looked at the piece of meat in the fellow's hand, and a strange idea sparked. A new thought suddenly flashed in its mind. It told its kind that it was truly fed up with this life and longed for a different existence. Its fellow yaksha was utterly astonished to hear it speak like that. Continuing, it said that it wished to become a human. It yearned to experience mortal life, to feel all the joys, angers, sorrows, and delights of the human world. Its fellow yakshas could not stop it. They had no choice but to dig a new grave and peel off a human skin to help it fulfill its wish. Two of its kind helped it. It put on the human skin. The soft skin embraced the yaksha's body, transforming its shape into that of a true human. They even took the gold and silver buried with the deceased as capital for the yaksha. With its new form and money, it was ready to begin its life in the human world. It smiled brightly, bidding farewell to its grieving, weeping kin to step into the human world with a new identity and a heart full of yearning. The yaksha opened a general store. It generously allowed customers to buy on credit if they didn't have cash. Its store quickly became bustling and lively. Due to its generosity, people simply came to the store to take goods without paying. Thus, the number of credit customers grew, and the store's finances began to suffer. Its flourishing business also attracted the attention of local thugs. They began to lurk, trying to disrupt its store. The thugs brazenly came to the store demanding protection money. It had no choice but to pay them to avoid trouble, though it hated doing so. It also befriended a widow and frequently gave her gold and silver for living expenses, hoping to build a romantic relationship. However, the widow only saw it as a money bag. She took its money and then used it to dally with other men, never truly sincere with it. After that, the yaksha wanted to run its business properly, but its store was frequently vandalized. Someone brought apples and claimed they had worms, falsely accusing it of selling poor quality goods. After checking, it saw that the person hadn't bought anything from its store. However, the rogue still spoke boldly, snarling demands for compensation. Finally, to settle the matter, it had to compensate the rogue. Before leaving, the rogue even lectured it, telling it not to sell poor quality goods anymore. The Yaksha had to try to suppress its anger. Human life was not as it had imagined. Deeply disappointed, it sat drinking alone. Its journey to the human world was nothing like it had imagined. Life was full of complexity, schemes, and dark sides. It saw a few figures, their faces covered, approaching. It turned out to be its kin coming to visit, making it surprised and ask why they had come. Its kin advised the Yaksha not to torment itself, but to return to its comfortable Yaksha life. But it stubbornly insisted on continuing its attempt. After that, it hastily shooed its kin away, fearing their true forms would terrify mortals. Seeing its dismissive attitude, its kin angrily left, no longer wanting to be its friends. They let it continue to brave the challenges of human life. The Yaksha still couldn't believe that human hearts could be so wicked. It still held a fragile belief in the inherent goodness of humanity. The next day, it took its ledger to demand payment from those who had bought on credit. But when it arrived, they flatly denied everything and chased it away, claiming it was disgracing their honor. Seeing their shamelessness, the Yaksha held up its ledger, saying everything was clearly recorded, but all of them denied their debts. They even brazenly tore up its ledger, then fiercely beat it. Now, the Yaksha was completely helpless against their brutality and shamelessness. It returned to its store, bandaging its own wounds. Suddenly, several thugs burst in again, continuing to cause trouble. After that, they snatched the money box. The thugs robbed the Yaksha of all its money and possessions, leaving nothing behind. It tried to resist, wanting to reclaim its belongings, but was mercilessly beaten by them. It was utterly helpless against their brutality. During the beating, the human skin on its face was torn open. The fake skin slipped down, revealing a part of the Yaksha's pale, terrifying face underneath. The Yaksha stumbled to the widow's house, wanting to lament its woes. The widow was astonished to see it in such a state and asked what had happened. But as soon as the widow heard the Yaksha had no money left, she immediately turned hostile. She snapped, "Now that you're out of money, what will you give me to spend?" And another man appeared. The widow and her lover together mercilessly chased the Yaksha out of the house. It was at this point that the Yaksha completely gave up hope. It realized that being human was truly not easy, and this world was full of harshness. The Yaksha, with its half-human, half-demon face, its eyes filled with disappointment, it decided that the next day it would host a feast. The next day, it invited all those who had tormented it, the thugs, the debt dodgers, the swindlers, and even the widow, to its store. One thug sat at the table, surprised that it was called a feast, but there were no dishes, not understanding the intention. The Yaksha then coldly said, "You are the dishes." It tore off the human skin from its face, fully revealing its hideous Yaksha face with sharp fangs. After that, it signaled to several other hidden Yaksha kin. All the Yakshas appeared, ready for a bloody feast. Horrifying screams erupted. The Yakshas had a lavish feast, joyfully devouring those people, ending its journey as a human with a bloody revenge. This peculiar story tells of a family named Yang, which had two brothers. The wife of the elder brother was an extremely fierce woman. The cruelty and tyranny of the sister-in-law made the entire family, from old to young, live in fear. Everyone had to bow down to her authority. She treated her husband like a servant, constantly yelling at him. Anything that displeased her, she would scold, and even beat him mercilessly. The elder brother was naturally timid and dared not talk back. Under his wife's oppression, he also treated his own father harshly. Their father was kicked out by his daughter-in-law to live in a dilapidated warehouse. She not only ignored him but also failed to provide him with 3 meals a day, treating him poorly. Out of love for his father, the elder brother had to secretly bring him food every time. He only dared to do it furtively, fearing that if his wife found out, she would cause another scene. The old father knew his son's difficult situation. He understood that the family's business was managed solely by his daughter-in-law, so despite his hardship, he had to grit his teeth and endure it. He advised his son to be patient for the family to be at peace. The elder brother, hearing his father's words, could only bow his head and cry, feeling helpless and ashamed. Despite being very dissatisfied with his wife's behavior, he only dared to be angry in his heart and never spoke out. He knew he could do nothing to change the situation. Even the younger brother's family had to live by watching the sister-in-law's mood. The entire family lived in constant fear. The daughter-in-law always considered herself the pillar of the family. She would often scold, saying that if it weren't for her, everyone would be begging on the streets. One year, the 2 young brothers went to the capital to take the imperial examination. Freed from their sister-in-law's oppression, they dared to laugh and talk freely, feeling immense relief. During this trip, they were lucky to make the acquaintance of a man. The 3 of them quickly became as close as brothers. Feeling they were very much in tune with each other, the 3 decided to perform a sworn brotherhood ceremony, becoming brothers with different surnames, vowing to share both fortune and misfortune. On the day of their farewell, the new acquaintance promised that he would come to their house in the near future to visit his 2 sworn brothers and strengthen their bond. A few days later, he kept his promise and came to the Yang family's house as a guest. Upon arriving, he saw their father sitting by the wall, sunning himself, his clothes torn, looking very haggard. Thinking the old man was a neighbor, the guest politely approached to ask for directions to the Yang family's house. The old man replied briefly and wearily. The 2 Yang brothers were overjoyed to see their sworn brother visit. They hurried out to greet him and invited him into the house with great enthusiasm. What the guest found strange was that besides the 2 brothers, no one else in the house came out to greet him. He was curious and asked about their father and their wives. When asked, both brothers appeared hesitant and flustered. They didn't know how to answer about their family's awkward situation at that moment. The 3 sat and talked for a long time, but no one served dinner. The guest, hungry from his long journey, spoke up and asked if they could eat. After waiting for a while longer, a maid shyly brought out some food. The girl's face was filled with fear, as if she were doing something wrong. The meal for the guest consisted only of a few steamed buns made from coarse flour and a plate of pickled vegetables. This was a sign of disrespect for an honored guest visiting the house. The guest was furious, feeling that he had been treated this way despite considering them brothers. The Yang family was not poor. This was clearly an insult. The guest's shouts startled the wife. From outside, her scolding voice echoed, asking who they had brought home as a drinking companion this time. She stormed in angrily, scolding her husband for not thinking straight, wondering what would happen if he had brought a mountain bandit into the house. Her face was extremely vicious. The elder brother tried to step forward to explain the new guest's identity, hoping his wife would understand and be more considerate of his awkward situation in front of his sworn brother. But the wife gave him no chance to explain. She roared that he dared to talk back, then slapped him so hard it was like a thunderclap. The slap terrified the elder brother so much that he knelt on the floor, not daring to breathe. This sight stunned both the guest and the younger brother. Seeing the tense situation, the younger brother quickly pulled the guest outside, quietly advising him not to be angry and to avoid making the situation worse. But the guest did not leave. He borrowed an empty room, had a servant prepare a lavish feast, and then invited their father to dine with them. The father was both grateful for the man's kindness and afraid that his daughter-in-law would get angry. He never expected to be treated with such respect. The meal hadn't even begun when the daughter-in-law's noisy scolding and shouting came from outside. She roared from the door, asking who was causing a commotion in her house, her attitude extremely defiant. The guest stepped out, intending to reason with her, but she didn't listen. She cursed him horribly and ordered him to get out of her house immediately. To appease her anger, the entire Yang family, from the old father to the small children, had to kneel in a row to apologize. It was only then that she left, feeling satisfied. As she turned her back, the guest said a meaningful sentence. He warned that a shrew like her would one day be punished by someone else. That night, the elder brother was punished by his wife. He was not allowed to sleep in bed and had to kneel on the floor all night to atone for his mistakes that day. In the middle of the night, the room door suddenly burst open. From outside, strange black figures with shackles on their feet slowly entered the room. They were a group of demons with tall bodies and fierce faces. They entered the room, exuding a terrifying, murderous aura that made the space cold. One demon approached the bed, grabbed the sleeping wife, and pulled her up. She shrieked in horror, not understanding what was happening to her. Terrified, she begged the demons to spare her life and promised to give them all her money and belongings, as long as they didn't harm her. But the demon roared that they didn't need money. They were there to take the hearts and livers of wicked women, and she had to pay for her actions. She still tried to deny her guilt. Crying, she said that she managed the household day and night and had never done a single evil thing, begging the demons to spare her. The demon then listed her crimes. It said she was unfilial for leaving the old man to suffer from hunger and cold, then used a knife to slash her chest. Fresh blood began to ooze out. Next, it accused her of mistreating her husband, saying she didn't uphold the marital duties. With every crime listed, another slash was made on her body. The demon continued to list all the sins she had committed, from her bad treatment of her sister-in-law to her harshness towards her children and grandchildren. After listing all her crimes, one demon asked its companion how they should deal with this wicked woman. The other replied that they should tear out her heart and liver. Seeing his wife about to be killed, the husband, though scared, knelt down and begged. He pleaded with the demons to spare his wife's life, despite everything she had done. Seeing his sincerity, the lead demon decided to spare her this once. It warned her that if she ever relapsed, they would surely return to take her heart. With that, the demons turned and left, disappearing into the darkness. The husband quickly ran to help his wife, who was trembling with fear and pain. After that horrifying night, she fell seriously ill, bedridden for more than half a month. The husband stayed by her side, taking very good care of his wife. Since recovering, the elder wife had completely changed. She became filial to her father-in-law, harmonious with her sister-in-law, and the family became peaceful. Sometimes, old habits would flare up, and she would want to get angry and scold others. But in those moments, a sharp pain would appear. Every time she was about to lose her temper, she would feel her heart and liver ache as if being cut. The fear of the demons would rush back, making her immediately restrain her anger. The strange guest stayed with the Yang family for more than a month. When it was time to leave, he declined the brother's invitation to stay a few more days, saying it was time for him to go. He said that he still had to visit other friends, then packed his belongings and left. Among his belongings were paintings of demons. Since that farewell, the two Yang brothers never saw the strange guest again. They never knew that he was the one who had saved their family. This peculiar story begins in a tavern in a town, where the main character, Lee, was having a meal with his friend. However, he couldn't take his eyes off a mysterious group of customers at another table nearby. Seeing Lee staring intently, his friend couldn't hide his curiosity and asked him why he seemed so interested in the strange customers. Lee didn't explain much, just gestured for his friend to take a closer look at the faces of the men at the other table, especially their cheeks. The friend looked closely and was astonished to see that all the men had an identical scar on both of their cheeks, a strange mark of unknown origin. Noticing Lee's curiosity, the friend decided to stand up and, on his behalf, approach the group to get to the bottom of the story behind those scars. He politely walked to the merchant's table, bowed, and expressed his and Lee's curiosity about the special scars on their faces. The group of merchants was quite open. They invited Lee and his friend to sit with them. After ordering more wine and food, the story of their horrifying encounter began to be told. As they recalled the horrifying event that had occurred, the men's faces still couldn't hide their extreme fear, as if the nightmare still haunted them. They introduced themselves as merchants who frequently traveled between provinces. 2 years prior, during a business trip, they had encountered a terrifying incident. That night, as they were stopping to rest and build a fire in a desolate forest, a terrifying thing unexpectedly befell the group. Suddenly, their horses became panicked, neighing and thrashing as if sensing a mortal danger approaching in the darkness. The whole group looked fearfully towards the forest, and they were horrified to see a gigantic deformed figure slowly emerging from the thick bushes. The creature was several feet tall. Every step it took made the ground tremble. It looked like a wild force with terrifying and threatening power. Without a word, the giant grabbed a horse, using the extraordinary strength of its hands to brutally tear the animal apart right before their eyes. After tearing the horse's body, the savage giant stuffed the still warm flesh straight into its mouth and devoured it with great relish, paying no attention to their presence. After eating the horse, it turned and advanced towards the merchants, who were trembling with fear, hiding behind large trees with a faint hope of being safe. With its large hands and sharp claws, the giant easily grabbed 2 of them, lifting them up like small, helpless dolls. The giant looked at the men who were crying in despair. then reached out and broke off a long, sturdy rattan branch, as if preparing to unleash a brutal act. After that, the giant took a sharp piece of rattan and cruelly pierced it through the cheek of each man, from one side to the other, to the sound of their pained screams. The giant strung them all together in a line, lifted them up effortlessly, and turned, walking back in the direction it came from, dragging the victims who were in extreme pain. One of the merchants, despite his extreme pain, managed to stay calm. He pulled out a dagger and cut the rattan string that was piercing everyone's cheeks. The group fell to the ground and quickly hid in the bushes. Fortunately, the giant seemed completely unaware and continued to walk into the night. Suddenly, another giant, even taller and bigger, appeared. The first giant intended to show off his spoils, but realized the humans had disappeared. Furious that his prey had escaped, the taller giant swung its hand in a devastating slap, sending the other giant flying, knocking down a series of trees. Just then, a young woman emerged from the forest. She was dressed in simple clothes but exuded an extraordinary aura, completely calm in the face of the chaotic scene. A large, dead tiger was slung over her shoulder, and she held a bronze mace in her hand. Her demeanor was both powerful and mysterious, astonishing others. The appearance of the mysterious woman made the two giants tense. They let out an angry roar and charged at her at the same time, determined to devour her. Without any fear, the woman gently placed the tiger on the ground. She swung the bronze mace in her hand, ready to confront the attack of the two giant creatures. She skillfully dodged the giant's attack, then, with lightning speed, swung her mace in a devastating blow to its head, causing it to become dazed and fall to the ground. Immediately after, she turned and delivered another thunderous mace strike to the other giant, taking it down easily before it could react. Despite the great difference in size, the woman had quickly and effortlessly taken down both giants, demonstrating extraordinary strength. The last giant to be knocked down still tried to reach out its large hand, intending to grab and strangle the woman to avenge its kin. The woman calmly turned, swung her mace, and struck the outstretched hand. A loud crack echoed as the giant's fingers were crushed. In pain and fear, the two giants helped each other up and groaned as they walked away. It was only then that the group of merchants dared to slowly emerge from their hiding place. They approached, kneeling before the heroine, thanking her profusely for saving them from a gruesome death by the skin of their teeth. After that, the girl took them to a stone house where she lived. There, she helped them bandage and treat the painful wounds on their cheeks. To entertain her guests, she stewed the meat from the tiger she had hunted, inviting the merchants to a hearty and warm meal after their ordeal. The next morning, when the group of merchants left, the girl personally escorted them for a long distance, ensuring they were safely out of the dangerous forest. The merchants said that to this day, they still don't know who that heroine was, nor do they know the origin of those giants. Hearing the story, Lee and his friend were extremely astonished. They had to exclaim that this was indeed a rare and incredible encounter, an unbelievable story in the world. This peculiar story is about a scholar who was naturally flirtatious and liked to philander. He often secretly had an affair with his neighbor's wife. Whenever the neighbor was away, he would sneak into her house for their tryst. The woman would hastily urge him to leave because her husband was about to return. One night, After making love with his mistress and drinking a lot of wine, the scholar was dead drunk, stumbling along the deserted road back home. In his drunken state, he unexpectedly bumped into someone walking in the opposite direction. The strong collision startled them both, and they staggered, nearly falling on the empty street. Looking up, he recognized the man as his cousin, who had passed away a few years ago. In his drunken stupor, he blurted out, "Aren't you dead?" He dragged his cousin into a tavern. There, he learned that his cousin was a judge under the command of the wheel-turning king, who managed the ledger of life, death, and reincarnation in the underworld. Hearing this, the scholar became curious about his own fate. He wanted to know if his name was in the ledger, how long he would live, and what he would die of. His cousin did not hide anything, sternly saying that his name was indeed recorded in the dark underworld's ledger. For accumulating many evil deeds, he would have to suffer torment after death. The scholar was terrified upon hearing this, sweat pouring from his body. He quickly begged his cousin, asking if there was any way to avert this calamity. His cousin advised that the only way was to give up his bad habits and actively perform good deeds, and only then could he hope to reduce his suffering after death. But old habits die hard, and he would have to control himself. The next morning, when the tavern servant woke him up, the scholar was sober. He sat alone at a messy banquet table. His cousin was gone. His cousin had disappeared, but his warning still echoed in the scholar's ears, making him shiver with fear about his future. The scholar was terrified of the prospect of suffering in hell after death. He was determined to change and start a new life to atone for the mistakes he had made. Upon returning home, he truly cultivated his mind and character. He spent every day in his study reading books, vowing never to step out the door to avoid external temptations. Occasionally, he would go outside to enjoy the scenery and compose poems, but he was completely unaware that his neighbor had discovered the affair and was waiting for an opportunity to take revenge. One day, the neighbor followed the scholar up the mountain, pretending to run into him by chance. He invited the scholar to go see a wonder with him, saying he had heard strange noises coming from an abandoned well. The neighbor led the scholar to a dry well at the foot of the mountain. He enticed the scholar to look down into the well to see if there was anything unusual. The scholar, naive and unsuspecting, leaned over. While he was engrossed in looking down, the neighbor, with a ferocious look, gave him a hard shove from behind. The scholar, completely unprepared, was pushed hard from behind and fell straight down into the dry well. His scream echoed and then died out in the deep darkness. The neighbor looked down into the well, cursing the man who had dared to have an affair with his wife. After feeling satisfied, he nonchalantly walked away, leaving the scholar to his fate. The scholar fell to the bottom of the well. Fortunately, he didn't die, but he was severely injured. He lay motionless at the bottom of the dark, cold well, without a glimmer of hope. The damp and slippery well walls made it impossible for him to climb up. In his despair, he could only weakly cry for help, hoping someone would hear him. Fearing discovery, the neighbor secretly returned the next day. Hearing the scholar's weak cries for help echoing from the well, he became even angrier. He cursed in anger, gathered large rocks from nearby, and threw them straight down the well to silence the scholar, determined not to let him survive. He even covered it with more soil and rocks. The scholar barely had time to squeeze his body into a small cave in the well wall to avoid the falling rocks. To find a way to live, the scholar began to crawl deeper into the dark and narrow cave. He didn't know where this path would lead him. When he reached an underground stream and could go no further, the scholar had no choice but to stop. In despair, he sat cross-legged, clasped his hands, and recited Buddhist scriptures, surrendering himself to fate. After an unknown amount of time, from deep within the cave, Blue Willow, the wisps, began to float towards him, bringing with them a cold, eerie atmosphere. Inside each willow, the wisp was a tiny soul. The scholar gathered all his courage and asked who they were and why they were there. The souls replied that they were all the spirits of miners who had died in a tragic mine collapse many years ago and could not find peace. They said that in that year, the mine owner, out of greed, had them overmine the area, disturbing the tomb of a famous and upright official in the region. The reckless mining had disturbed the tomb, breaking the feng shui of the land, which caused an unforeseen disaster for the miners. The official was enraged and sent a flood to submerge the entire mine. The sudden tragedy struck so fast that not a single person could escape in time. 42 miners were killed, buried under the cold water. Their bodies remained there forever, never to be buried properly. The souls lamented that because their remains were still submerged and not buried in the earth, they could not find peace, and they were forced to wander as lonely ghosts in that place. As they were talking, a string of bright red lanterns floated towards them from a distance, illuminating the entire cave. The souls said that the official had arrived to bestow blessings upon them. The miners' souls guided the scholar across the water's surface, moving towards the lanterns. They moved as if weightless, a bizarre sight. The scholar was curious about the official's background. The souls only knew that he had once been a scholar and, after death, was honored as a great guest, who often came there to give alms. After walking about half a mile, they left the water and arrived at a large mansion with high steps. The place exuded an aura of dignity and antiquity. A life-size candle was lit inside the house. An elderly scholar walked out to greet them. His demeanor exuded wisdom and kindness. After a period of conversation, the scholar was astonished to discover that this scholar was a long-deceased ancestor of his own family. The official smiled kindly and told the scholar to feel at ease staying there. He promised that one day he would return to the mortal world and make a name for himself. From then on, the scholar spent his days with books. After many years of diligent study, his character also changed, becoming more calm and wise. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. The scholar was no longer a philandering young man, but had become a mature and steady man. The official said that the opportunity for the scholar to return to the mortal world had arrived. He gave him some instructions and told the souls to take him back to the bottom of the well. The miner's souls took the scholar back to the bottom of the well. He sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and meditated, awaiting the chance to return to his mortal life. Just then, the filled well was being dug up by people. They were astonished to see the scholar still alive after being buried underground for 3 years. It turned out that a new mine owner had bought the rights to mine in this area. Thanks to this, the scholar had the opportunity to see sunlight again after all those years. The scholar was brought home and cared for by his family. A year later, he had fully recovered and returned to normal, but his character had completely changed. This peculiar story begins one early morning when Wang's son, in a state of panic, was running and screaming loudly, heading straight for the government office. Wang San stammered and trembled, reporting that last night he had witnessed a blood-sucking yaksha and had narrowly escaped with his life. He begged the magistrate for help. The magistrate was somewhat skeptical, as he had never heard of a yaksha. He asked Wang San to recount the details to verify the authenticity of the story. Wang San began to tell the entire horrifying event he had experienced the previous night, his face filled with haunting fear. The night before, as he was sleeping soundly, strange noises began to echo from outside his house. Wang San's wife woke him up, urging him to go outside and see why the livestock in the courtyard were crying out in such agony. The painful sounds worried her greatly. Wang San guessed that a ferret might be causing trouble. He grabbed a stick, hastily put on a jacket, and tiptoed out the door, preparing for the worst-case scenario. When Wang San got close to the chicken coop and glanced inside, the sight that met his eyes terrified him to the core. He stood frozen, unable to move. He saw a winged monster gnawing on livestock on the ground. Its gruesome form and the bloody scene stunned Wang San. Wang San was so scared that his legs went limp, and he immediately fell to the ground. The wooden stick in his hand dropped, creating a loud noise that broke the silence of the night. The sound of the falling stick startled the monster. It immediately stopped eating, raised its head, and its blood-red eyes stared directly at Wang San. The monster slowly stood upright, revealing its hideous body. Its eyes were blood-red, its teeth sharp, and its long fangs curved, sending chills down Wang San's spine. The monster opened its mouth wide and let out a blood-curdling roar at Wang San. The sound seemed to tear through the night, terrifying Wang San to the extreme. Overwhelmed by the monster's roar, Wang San was so horrified that he couldn't help but urinate on the spot. He lay sprawled on the ground, motionless with fear. The monster did not attack further. It simply flapped its wings powerfully, soared into the air, and disappeared into the night. It left Wang San alone with his extreme terror. On the very day Wang San came to report, a few other villagers also came to the government office, reporting that their cattle and livestock had been slaughtered, all dead from having their blood drained. The magistrate, upon hearing this, ordered his officials to increase patrols at night. Although he was still skeptical about the existence of the monster, he could not ignore the villagers' claims. During one night patrol, the officials suddenly heard a fierce flapping of wings in the air. The sound cut through the silence, making them immediately alert. They looked up. They indeed saw a yaksha-like monster flying from a house, confirming Wang San's story, which terrified the officials. The officials hastily returned to the government office, trembling as they reported the entire truth to the magistrate. They recounted what they had witnessed with their own eyes, which sent a shiver down the magistrate's spine. The magistrate was perplexed, asking himself if yakshas truly existed. The Grand Master next to him, a man of experience, offered a plan to set a trap to catch the blood-sucking monster. The officials, upon hearing the plan, were worried. They reported that the creature had large wings, was skilled at flying, and only appeared at night, making it very difficult to catch. However, the Grand Master was full of confidence. He told the officials to go to the riverbank and look for a strange man. With this man's help, they would surely catch the monster. The officials obeyed and went to the riverbank to find the mysterious man. They were confused by the vastness of the river, not knowing who they were supposed to be looking for. One official complained that the Grand Master had only said a strange person, without specifying what was strange about him, leaving them clueless. On the river bank, there were only fishermen. No one knew where the strange person was. As they were searching in vain, an official suddenly spotted something. From a distance, they saw a person standing on a large rock by the riverbank. The person held a long pole, his eyes intently fixed on the river's surface. His posture exuded an intense focus and extraordinary aura, truly befitting a strange person. The man said nothing, only continuously swung his arm and threw the long poles into the river. Each throw made a loud splash, demonstrating extraordinary strength. The officials were completely bewildered, finding this person very strange and not understanding why he was throwing poles into the river. Everyone found his actions puzzling. In the midst of their confusion, a small boat unexpectedly appeared on the river. The person on the boat calmly retrieved each long pole, and only then did the officials understand the purpose of the strange man's actions. On each pole was a plump fish. The officials were overjoyed. This was indeed the strange man the Grand Master had mentioned. The officials quickly approached, bowed, and explained their purpose. The strange man, hearing that it was to eliminate a menace to the people, did not hesitate and went with them to the government office. The Grand Master instructed the strange man to prepare long poles and hide on the roof of a tall building in the city. He would wait for the right moment to strike down the blood-sucking monster. The strange man hid on the tall building, patiently waiting. Time passed slowly until the middle of the night, when everything was asleep, and he did not take his eyes off the tranquil darkness. In the dead of night, gongs and drums suddenly rang out loudly throughout the city. The deafening sound shattered the silence, serving as a signal for a confrontation. The strange man immediately knew it was the signal. The blood-sucking Yaksha had appeared. He instantly focused, preparing for the upcoming battle, determined to destroy the monster. He held the long pole, leaning on the railing to observe. Indeed, a monster with gigantic wings was soaring into the air, clearly visible in the night. The strange man did not hesitate and launched the long pole. The pole whizzed through the air, hitting the monster, causing it to fall hard to the ground. The magistrate led everyone to observe closely. Everyone was astonished by the creature's massive size. It was not a blood-sucking yaksha, but a gigantic bat. No one had ever seen a bat so large, which was why they had mistaken it for a yaksha. This peculiar story is about a young man named Ma. Every morning, he would greet his mother and push his vendor cart to work, earning a living. His family consisted of just him and his mother, who relied on each other. The old mother would always tell her son to maintain a peaceful demeanor when selling, and he would filially reply. Ma made a living with a small noodle stall. He worked hard from dawn until dusk, earning just enough to get by. Though he was over 30, he was still unmarried. Despite his poverty, Ma was a very honest and kind-hearted person. He never cheated in his business and was always cheerful and friendly to everyone. Because of his kindness and sincerity, his small noodle stall was loved by many people who frequently came to support him. He always saw off his customers with a smile. Not only that, but Ma also had a warm heart and was always willing to help others. He never hesitated to lend a hand when he saw someone in need. Whenever he saw someone struggling, he would readily help without a second thought for his own gain. His kindness made everyone around him fond of him. Every day after he finished selling, he would take the leftover noodles, which were not as presentable but still delicious, and save them for those who were poorer than him. He often brought the leftover food to beggars on the street, sharing his meager warmth with them without any contempt. Because of his kind nature, many girls in the village were fond of him. If it weren't for his extreme poverty, he would have likely been happily married long ago. One day, Ma was packing up his stall to go home. He saw his old mother sitting on the bed, waiting for him to return for dinner, but her face was a little unhappy and troubled. As a filial son, Ma immediately noticed his mother's unusual demeanor. He worriedly went to her and asked if something was bothering her. During dinner, his mother recounted a strange story that had happened during the day. She said that after he had left for work, a strange girl had come to their house. It was in the middle of the day when she was cleaning the yard that a beautiful, wealthy young lady walked in, which surprised and flustered her. The strange girl said she had been fond of her son for a long time and wanted to marry him, a proposal that completely astonished his mother. Ma's mother felt it was not a match. She believed her family was poor and unworthy of the girl's noble status, so she refused. She thought that for such an important matter as marriage, there should be a proper matchmaker, and a girl should not come to the man's house herself to propose. Moreover, the girl's background was unclear. Hearing his mother's refusal, the young lady said nothing more, just quietly turned and left, leaving a sense of indescribable doubt in the old mother's heart. Ma, upon hearing this, also thought that such a good thing could never happen to him. He only listened out of curiosity and advised his mother not to think about it too much. However, the next day, the town's famous matchmaker suddenly came to their house. Ma's mother was surprised to greet her and asked why she had come. The matchmaker smiled and said she had come to bring good news, a wonderful marriage for Ma, which made the old mother even more curious. The matchmaker said that a wealthy young lady had fallen on hard times and now had no one to rely on. Having heard of Ma's kindness, she wanted to marry him to find a stable life. That very night, the young lady and her maid came to Ma's house with a dowry. The wedding was very simple, without any elaborate ceremonies. The mother and daughter-in-law simply put on a little makeup, and that was considered the completion of the wedding. The mother felt guilty that their poverty had caused her daughter-in-law to suffer such a disadvantage. What was strange was that as soon as the bride entered, the dilapidated dirt house of Ma and his mother suddenly transformed into a magnificent and luxurious mansion. Every corner of the house exuded an aura of wealth and luxury. The old dirt walls were replaced with precious wood, and the furniture became exquisite and expensive. On the table, simple country food turned into lavish delicacies. The coarse cloth clothes on the mother and son also transformed into silk and brocade, which left them utterly astonished. From then on, the lives of Ma and his mother changed completely. Every day they ate fine food, wore brocade clothes, and lived a life of wealth. However, there was one strange thing. Whenever they stepped out the door, the house would return to its dilapidated state, and their clothes would turn back into coarse cloth. Despite this, Ma's mother believed that her son was blessed to have married a celestial maiden. To thank the matchmaker, she brought a gift to her house to express her gratitude. When she met Ma's mother, the matchmaker was very flustered and surprised. She didn't understand why the old woman had come to her house to thank her. The matchmaker insisted that she had been home for the past few days and hadn't gone anywhere. She had also never arranged a marriage for anyone and did not know any such young lady. This horrified Ma's mother. She began to doubt her daughter-in-law's true identity, fearing that she might be some kind of fox spirit. Just then, The daughter-in-law and her maid suddenly appeared at the matchmaker's house. She gently chided the matchmaker for playing such a joke on her mother-in-law. She said that because the wedding was so rushed, she hadn't had a chance to invite the matchmaker, and now she had come to thank her. She also gave her a bamboo back scratcher as a gift. When the matchmaker took the stick, she was astonished to find that it was made entirely of pure silver. Overjoyed, she went along with the story and accepted the credit for the matchmaking. After resolving the misunderstanding, the mother and daughter-in-law left, feeling relieved. The matchmaker happily saw them off, still in a state of blissful exhilaration. And so, Ma and the young lady lived together in happiness and carefree bliss for 5 years, their love as strong as ever. One day, the young lady prepared a lavish feast and invited her husband to share a drink with her. Ma found it strange and asked his wife if it was a special day. The young lady sadly said that she was a celestial maiden who had been banished to the mortal world. Moved by his kindness, she had chosen to marry him. Now that her 5-year term was over, she had to return to heaven. Ma just laughed and thought his wife was drunk and talking nonsense. He didn't believe in such fantastical stories of celestial beings and spirits. The wife continued to instruct him, saying that their time together had come to an end. In the future, he would marry another woman, have 2 sons, and live to be 80 years old. With that, the wife gently floated into the air. It was only then that Ma realized his wife's words were all true, but it was too late. He frantically called out his wife's name in vain, but her figure had already vanished. The magnificent mansion also disappeared, returning to its old, dilapidated state. Ma ran out into the yard in agony, looking up at the sky and wailing. The immense loss shattered his heart into 1,000,000 pieces. In the vast blue sky, the figure of his celestial wife grew smaller and smaller, then disappeared completely, leaving him alone with his pain and endless regret. After that, Ma returned to his life of selling noodles. Everything unfolded just as the young lady had said. He married another wife and had 2 sons. When he was 80 years old, as he lay dying on his sickbed, a beautiful woman came to see him off on his final journey. It was his celestial wife from long ago. This strange tale is about a scholar who went to the capital to take the imperial examination. That day was the day the results were announced, and everyone gathered at the notice board to look for their names. Many rejoiced at their success and invited each other to celebrate. But our scholar was disheartened, having once again failed the examination, failing to achieve fame and status, his heart full of disappointment. Utterly disheartened, the scholar had no choice but to pack his belongings and set off to return to his hometown. The road ahead was long. On his way back, as if misfortune never comes singly, he encountered robbers. They stole all his luggage and money, leaving him destitute, not a penny to his name. The robbers intended to take his life, but fortunately one of them took pity on him. He told the other that taking the money was enough. Without money, the scholar trudged along, tired and hungry. He was nearly exhausted, and finally he entered a dilapidated temple dedicated to a king to find shelter for the night. In despair he collapsed, earnestly pleading for help. He whispered, "I am a distressed scholar, please your majesty, manifest yourself and save my life." In a state between sleep and wakefulness, the king suddenly manifested. He appeared with a procession of mysterious black-clad figures, standing majestically before the scholar. The king proclaimed that since the black-clad army was short of one person, he would have the scholar take that place. Thus, the scholar was assigned the task of being His Majesty's messenger, a strange mission. Immediately, the black-clad figures dressed him in an identical outfit. The scholar had now become part of the mysterious army, no longer a mere mortal. With just one leap, they all transformed into black crows soaring into the sky. He followed suit, and strangely enough, he too transformed into a crow, circling in the air. From then on, the scholar and the other black crows flew every day, carrying out the mission of transmitting messages between the mortal realm and the underworld, tirelessly bearing mysterious messages. When tired from long journeys, they often perched on the masts of boats sailing up and down the river, seeking a little rest before continuing their flight. The sailors on the boats often threw food to them. This was considered an act of good fortune, to pray for a safe and smooth journey and to avoid any risks. They believed that doing so would bring good luck and ensure their sea voyage was smooth sailing, averting all misfortunes and protecting their lives on the open sea. The scholar also learned how the other crows caught and pecked at food. Thanks to this, he was able to fill his hungry stomach after long flights, maintaining his strength. However, not all sailors believed in this. Some considered crows a bad omen and would shoot them with slingshots. One day, the scholar was unfortunately hit by a bullet from a slingshot. He was stunned and fell straight down, losing his ability to fly, falling into grave danger. Fortunately, another black crow quickly swooped in, grabbed him, and swiftly carried him away from danger, flying elsewhere to find a safe place. Upon returning to the dilapidated temple, the scholar was astonished to discover that the black crow that had saved him turned out to be a beautiful young woman with mysterious black wings. Her name was Mulan, and she devotedly nursed him. With her black wings still on her back, Mulan helped him gradually recover, and his wounds subsided. Every day, Mulan went to find food to nourish him, and so, after many days of meticulous care, his wounds completely healed and his health recovered. As time passed, the two gradually developed deep feelings for each other. They lived together as husband and wife, inseparable, forming a romantic relationship. They flew together in the sky every day, exploring everywhere. Everyone who witnessed this sight was amazed by the strange winged lovers. Mulan advised the scholar not to remain immersed in the situation, but to return and continue his studies to achieve fame and status. However, he did not want to leave the girl. She promised, when he succeeded in the imperial examination, she would come and marry him. The scholar also vowed to marry only her in this life. Although he was reluctant to leave his lover, he still listened to her, returned home, buried himself in his studies, diligently working day and night with high determination. Finally, he succeeded in the examination, was appointed a high official, and returned to his hometown in glory, with his servants accompanying him, looking dignified. On his way back, he encountered a ragged mountain bandit severely wounded after a brawl. The robber looked pitiful and begged for his life. The scholar's troops captured the robber. Although he begged for a way to survive, the scholar remained unmoved. He coldly replied that he was an official and could not tolerate robbers. How could he condone an evildoer? He firmly ordered the robber to be taken back for punishment. On the way to be escorted, the robber took advantage of a momentary lapse, suddenly broke free from the soldier's control, and fled desperately, no one able to catch him. He fled deep into the desolate, rugged mountains, hoping to escape the pursuit of the officials and find a safe hiding place. Starving, his stomach rumbling, the robber suddenly saw a flock of black crows flying across the sky, and his eyes gleamed with a glimmer of hope to find food. He quickly picked up a large stone, aimed carefully, and threw it with all his remaining strength at the flock of crows, hoping to hit one. Strangely enough, the robber hit a black crow. The unfortunate crow fell to the ground near his feet, motionless, lying still. Disregarding life and death, the robber pounced on the crow, tore it apart, and devoured it. Thanks to this crude meal, he escaped starvation, saving his life. Returning to his hometown, the scholar waited day and night for Mulan, but she remained silent and untraceable. Even in his old age, he never saw her appear, his heart full of longing. The love-struck man lived a solitary life, waiting for Mulan. He did not know that a moment of ill will had sealed the tragic fate of this love, preventing her from ever coming. This peculiar story recounts that, according to legend, in a manor in the west of the city lived an old man. His life passed by in a simple and quiet manner in the peaceful village. Living alone in his old age, the old man felt lonely, so he raised a flock of ducks for company. Every day, he would happily call them over to prepare a hearty meal for them. The old man would lovingly scatter food for the ducks, gently telling them to eat a little more. Taking care of the flock of ducks became his simple joy whenever he had free time. The old man didn't raise the ducks for their eggs or meat. For him, caring for them every day was simply a way to fill the loneliness of his old age. Looking at the flock of ducks, the old man smiled kindly, telling them not to fight over the food. He felt that raising poultry in the house made his life less lonely and empty. Meanwhile, the old man's ducks were taken care of very meticulously, so each one grew quickly, becoming fat, healthy, and very appealing to a hungry person. Indeed, the small flock of ducks brought a lot of joy and comfort to the old man's life, making his golden years warmer. Living right next door to the old man was a man known for his laziness. The quack-quack sounds of the ducks from his neighbor's house often irritated him. Since his parents passed away, this man did nothing but sit around all day, refusing to work. His life was therefore always in a state of feast or famine, extremely miserable. The lazy man spent all day lying in bed. The noisy duck calls annoyed him. He would constantly curse and threaten to butcher them sooner or later. Night gradually fell, enveloping the entire village. This was also when the lazy man decided to act to satisfy the gnawing hunger in his stomach. As he was writhing in hunger, a wicked thought suddenly occurred to him. He remembered the fat ducks being raised in the old man's yard next door. Just thinking about the succulent duck meat, he couldn't control his craving. His mouth watered, urging him to carry out his dark intention immediately. He quietly climbed over the wall and saw that the old man was fast asleep. He didn't hesitate for a moment, gently jumping into the old man's yard to carry out his plan. After getting into the yard, he tiptoed, making no sound. His target was the duck coop, where a feast awaited him. He secretly reached his hand into the coop and, as fast as lightning, grabbed the fattest duck in the flock. The poor duck had no idea of the disaster that was about to befall it. To avoid making a sound and waking the old man, he acted with extreme cruelty. He used all his strength to snap the duck's neck before it could make a single sound. He took the duck home and quickly boiled a large pot of water. After that, he began the process of plucking the feathers, preparing for a hearty meal after many days of hunger. After cleaning the duck, he put it in the pot and started to cook. Before long, the savory smell of the duck meat had spread throughout his dilapidated house. He looked at the steaming pot of duck, sighing that time was passing so slowly that he became impatient, unable to wait until he could enjoy the delicious duck. Finally, the duck was cooked and tender. He placed the hot, fragrant duck on a plate, ready to enjoy the reward of what he had just stolen from his kind neighbor. Unable to wait any longer, he used both hands, holding a duck leg in each, and began to eat voraciously, satisfying the hunger that had tormented him all day. In no time, the fat duck was completely gone. He ate so cleanly that he wanted to gnaw on the bones, satisfying the hunger that had plagued him for so long. After eating his fill, the lazy man felt extremely satisfied. He just lay down on the bed and quickly fell into a deep sleep, snoring like thunder. In the middle of his sound sleep, he suddenly felt his whole body start to itch strangely. The itch became more and more intense, preventing him from sleeping peacefully. The itching grew worse and worse, spreading all over his body. He continuously scratched subconsciously, but the uncomfortable sensation did not subside at all. He woke up with a start from an indescribable, intense itching. He wondered why he was so itchy, feeling as if something was piercing through his skin. In a panic, he quickly pulled up his sleeve to check. He was utterly horrified to discover that duck feathers were sprouting from the skin on his arm. He quickly took off his shirt and became even more terrified. Duck feathers had grown all over his body, from his chest to his stomach, causing an unbearable itch. He tried to endure the pain, using his hands to pull each feather out of his body. However, the scary thing was that they would quickly grow back like a curse. The lazy man struggled with the pain and itching for half a day. Finally, exhausted and in agony, he passed out on his bed in despair. In his delirium, he vaguely saw a figure appear before his eyes. It was a celestial being, his ancestor, who had returned because of the wicked act he had committed. In his trance, his ancestor appeared and scolded him for being uneducated. The celestial being showed him the only way to escape this calamity. He had to be scolded fiercely by the duck's owner. After waking from his trance, the lazy man dared not hesitate. He quickly got up, trying to suppress the pain and itching to get dressed properly and find a way to save himself. He had to go to the old man's house. He went to the old man's house, pretending to ask about the noise to start a conversation. He said that he had heard the ducks calling last night and asked if the old man's house had been robbed of a duck. Hearing this, the old man paid attention and looked into the duck coop. He murmured as he counted and realized that one duck was indeed missing from the flock, but he didn't seem to care. Seeing that the old man had no reaction, the lazy neighbor suggested that he should curse the thief terribly, so that the thief would learn a lesson he would never forget. However, the old man had no intention of scolding the thief. The kind-hearted old man thought that the person must have been in great distress to have done such a thing, so he forgave them. However, the itching and pain had reached a climax, making the man extremely uncomfortable. Only by confessing to the old man could he free himself. He then knelt down before the old man, crying as he confessed that he was the one who stole the duck and earnestly begged him to save him from the curse. Looking up at the old man, he sincerely told him about the dream of meeting his ancestor. He said that he had endured so much pain that he couldn't stand it anymore. Seeing his state, the old man sighed and began to kindly advise him. He said that when he was young, he was a smart child, and he never expected him to turn out like this. This was the first time since his parents passed away that someone had genuinely advised him. The lazy man felt immense regret and shame, and he burst into tears of remorse. A miracle happened. As his tears of repentance fell, the duck feathers on his body began to fall off one by one, and the itching disappeared. To atone for his mistake and repay the old man's kindness, he decided to adopt the old man as his father, vowing to stay by his side and take care of him in his old age, living an honest life. This peculiar story is about a man named Kim. He came from a well-to-do family and had a special passion for studying and learning the arts of Taoism. He frequently visited Taoist temples to discuss philosophy with the priests. Thanks to this, he had cultivated a bit of Taoist virtue and profound knowledge. One day, Kim suddenly contracted a serious illness that he could not recover from. He knew that his time in this world was running out. He called his wife and mother to give them his final instructions. He insisted that his wife should remarry immediately after he passed away and not remain a widow for him. However, his wife disagreed. She cried and vowed that if anything happened to him, she would definitely remain a widow to be filial to her mother-in-law and raise their young child. Despite his wife's refusal, Kim insisted that she should remarry. He said that their child would have a mother's care, so she could remarry without any worries. His wife then swore a solemn oath that she would remain a widow until her death. If she broke this vow, she would suffer a gruesome death, her body not whole. Just a few days later, Kim actually passed away. His last words remained. But what would his wife's fate be after he was gone? His wife wore mourning clothes to mourn and guard her husband's coffin. She appeared to be in deep sorrow and very pious, fulfilling her duty as a wife. However, that was just her outward appearance. Beneath the mourning clothes, she wore beautiful outfits and carefully put on makeup. Her mother also came to pay her respects. She told her daughter's mother-in-law that her daughter was too young and could not be expected to remain a widow for the rest of her life, and she should be advised to move on. Kim's mother was furious upon hearing this. She hinted that her son's bones were not yet cold, but her daughter-in-law was already eager to put on makeup. Perhaps she was looking forward to marrying another man. That night, after Kim's mother had fallen asleep, Kim's ghost appeared in her dream. He gently called out to her, wanting to give her some important instructions. He told his mother that if his wife wanted to remarry, she should not stop her. He wanted her to be able to find new happiness after he was no longer in the world. After waking up, knowing that these were her son's final wishes, Kim's mother no longer interfered with her daughter-in-law's affairs, leaving her to make her own decisions. With no one to stop her, the daughter-in-law became more and more outrageous. Even during the mourning period, she began to flirt with a man named Lee. The man named Lee had found a way to get close to her neighbors. He often lingered nearby to have a chance to meet and talk with the woman of his dreams. At night, he would secretly climb over the wall to have an affair with her, despite the fact that she was still in mourning. This had been going on for many days. The two were deeply immersed in their illicit relationship, completely forgetting the vow and the husband who had just passed away. That night, the wife asked a servant to guard the coffin for her. She, meanwhile, secretly went to her private room to meet Lee. Suddenly, the coffin made a strange noise. Kim's ghost slowly sat up, which terrified the maid who was guarding it. After getting out of the coffin, Kim's ghost drew a magical sword. With murderous eyes, he went straight to his wife's bedroom to punish her for her betrayal. Immediately after, desperate screams erupted from the room. The wife and Lee had to face the wrath of the deceased husband. Lee, in a state of panic, only had time to wrap himself in a piece of cloth and ran for his life out of the room, not daring to look back even once. He hastily climbed over the wall and hid in the house of the old neighbor to find a place to hide, hoping to escape the pursuit of the terrifying ghost. After hiding for a while, he no longer heard any commotion. He looked inside the house and saw the old woman's daughter-in-law sleeping soundly on the bed. Taking advantage of the darkness, he groped his way onto the bed. The daughter-in-law, thinking it was her husband returning late from work, was not suspicious and just held on to him. A moment later, the old woman's son returned. When he heard strange sounds coming from the room, he knew his wife was being unfaithful. In a fit of jealousy and anger, he found a knife and rushed into the room, stabbing Lee to death on the spot to punish him for the adultery. Back at Kim's house, the maid quickly called Kim's mother to the daughter-in-law's room. When they arrived, they no longer saw her anywhere. On the ground, there was only a pair of men's shoes. At this point, Kim's mother realized that her daughter-in-law had been secretly having an affair during the mourning period. Both of them searched everywhere but could not find any trace of the daughter-in-law. She seemed to have disappeared without a trace after that horrifying night. Meanwhile, at the wife's parents' house, a large fire suddenly broke out. On the roof, there was a hidden figure whose identity was unknown. The girl's father discovered the figure. Thinking it was an arsonist, he ordered his servants to shoot the person down with arrows immediately. The arrow was shot, lodging directly into the person on the roof. The person fell down amidst the smoke and the raging fire, without a single cry. Everyone rushed to see. They were horrified to realize that the person who had been shot to death was their own daughter, who had died a tragic death. This strange and tragic incident quickly alarmed the local government. An investigation was conducted to shed light on the whole truth behind it. The old neighbor was reprimanded by the government for harboring an adulterer. She had to face punishment for failing to report the matter to the local authorities. Her son was also punished for the crime of murder. However, after serving some punishment, he was released and did not have to face the death penalty. Umi's parents were also reprimanded by the government for accidentally killing their own daughter. They had to take responsibility for their thoughtless action. In the end, they had to compensate Kim's mother with all the property in their house to resolve the matter. This was the price to pay for the tragedy of both families. It seemed that all these events had been preordained. Everything happened just as Kim had foreseen, like a perfect revenge plot. This strange tale tells of a merchant who was traveling in a foreign land. He received a letter informing him that his mother back home was gravely ill, so he hastily began his journey back. Passing through a small town with a most peculiar name and weary from his travels, he stopped at a riverside stall to drink tea and regain his strength. Curious, he asked the proprietor about the origin of the town's name. He could not understand why this place would bear such a strange and somewhat frightening moniker. The proprietor explained that while the river itself was not deep, the yellow mud at its bottom was deceptively so. Once you sank, there was no escape. Hearing that there was no ferry to cross the river, the merchant grew exceedingly anxious. He did not want to waste any more time. His only wish was to return home quickly. The proprietor told him to rent a golden buffalo to ride across. It was the only way to safely traverse the treacherous river. The merchant promptly rented a golden buffalo. He thanked the proprietor for the guidance and set off without a moment's hesitation. He rode the buffalo across the river, his heart burning with impatience, hoping only to soon be reunited with his ailing mother. With every step, the golden buffalo sank deep into the yellow mud. The journey became incredibly difficult and arduous. When they reached the point where the water came up to the buffalo's belly, the animal abruptly refused to move further. It stood frozen in place, its behavior utterly strange. The merchant recalled the proprietor's words, and a sliver of fear entered his heart. He cracked his whip, trying to urge the buffalo onward, desperate not to remain there. Yet, the buffalo could not seem to lift its legs. It began to sink ever deeper, as if about to be completely swallowed by the yellow mud. The merchant suddenly remembered the dagger he carried in his travel pack for self-defense. He saw no other choice but to use it to escape. He drew the dagger and plunged it forcefully into the buffalo's hindquarters, hoping the shock of pain would force it to struggle free from the mud. Under the intense agony, the buffalo began to twist its body violently. It used every ounce of its strength to break free from the yellow mud's grip. It carried the merchant back to the riverbank. They had narrowly escaped a terrible fate, a heart-stopping ordeal, fortunate not to have been pulled under. The proprietor was overjoyed that the merchant had managed to survive. He could not believe the man had actually escaped that perilous river. But when he looked towards the golden buffalo, he let out a cry of terror. The sight before him was an unbelievable and horrifying spectacle. Something was clinging to the buffalo's underbelly. Its shape was bizarre and frightening, unlike any normal creature. Its entire body was pitch black, its fingernails dug deep into the buffalo's flesh. No one knew what it was, and no one dared approach for a closer look. The onlookers shrieked in terror. It was the water ghoul that dragged people down into the mud. It was the cause of countless deaths in this place. One brave man suggested they pull it off the buffalo's belly. He wanted to see clearly what this thing was, and if it was as fearsome as the legends claimed. And so, they fetched long poles fitted with hooks. They worked together, pulling with all their might, but the water ghoul clung on with a death grip, refusing to let go. Only when they tore away a whole patch of the golden buffalo's flesh and hide were they able to rip it free. The scene was utterly savage and gruesome. Looking at the water ghoul, they saw its body was pitch black and stood about 2 meters tall. It had legs but could not stand steady, and it tried to attack everyone, its nature ferocious. The surrounding people, terrified, raised their clubs, determined to beat the monster to death and end its menace for good. A nauseating stench emanated from it. Someone then suggested they burn it, that it should not be left here for another second. Unexpectedly, after it was burned, the foul odor intensified. It spread for miles and took several months to finally dissipate. The merchant crossed the river in peace. From that day forward, few people were ever again tragically lost to the river's muddy depths. This horror story tells of a scholar who was betrothed since childhood to his cousin, the daughter of his maternal uncle. One day he traveled a long distance to his uncle's house to visit. Upon arrival, he was pained to learn that his uncle had passed away 2 years prior. His aunt then told him that his cousin, his fiancée, had also been married off elsewhere. The young man was heartbroken, blaming himself for being poor and unable to arrive sooner. He had missed both the joyous and sorrowful occasions of his relatives. His aunt, who had now taken over the family's business, showed a cold demeanor, even sneering that even if she had sent a message, he wouldn't have had the money for the travel expenses to come. Although they were relatives, the two families had little contact. Furthermore, his aunt was a concubine who had been married into the family, so their relationship was not deep. The servant arranged for him to stay in a temporary room in the wild garden behind the house, a form of treatment that clearly showed the aunt's contempt. Although he felt wronged and angry at this mistreatment, as a lone stranger in a foreign land, he could only helplessly accept it. That night, as he was preparing for sleep, he was startled to hear a whimpering, mournful cry echoing from outside. He listened to the crying, his heart filled with sorrow. He was curious as to who could be crying so tragically in the middle of the night. Curious and a little worried, he decided to leave his room and check who was crying so tragically in this desolate garden. As soon as he stepped out the door, the sight before his eyes left him astonished and a little frightened. The air became unusually cold. He saw a girl in white sitting next to a dry well in the corner of the garden. The desolate crying was coming from her. He cautiously approached, gently asking the girl why she was sitting there alone, crying in such a desolate place at night. The girl slowly turned her head. When he saw her tear-streaked face, he felt an uncanny sense of familiarity, as if he had met her somewhere before. He was astonished to realize it was his cousin and fiancée, whom he hadn't seen for many years. She also recognized him, calling his name through her tears. The cousin hugged him, sobbing uncontrollably. Confused, he asked why she was there when his aunt had said she was married off elsewhere. The girl sobbed and revealed a horrifying truth. She said that she had been harmed by her aunt and the aunt's lover, and was now just a ghost. Knowing it was his cousin, he wasn't afraid. He sat down to comfort her and listened as she recounted the tragic story that had happened 2 years ago. She said that her aunt had been having an affair with another man. Unfortunately, her uncle had discovered it by chance. To cover their crime, the treacherous couple acted cruelly. They had worked together to strangle the uncle to death with a rope. Because his cousin had witnessed the entire event, the adulterous couple did not hesitate to kill her as well to cover their tracks, then threw her body into the well. Because she had died of a wrongful death, the girl's resentment did not dissipate. Her body lay at the bottom of the well, but it had not decomposed, waiting for the day her injustice would be avenged. She said that her resentment was too heavy, so she could not leave the garden. Only when he arrived did she have the opportunity to manifest and recount her injustice. He was determined to avenge his cousin and her father. Seeing this, the cousin's ghost leaned in and whispered to him a very detailed plan for revenge. According to the plan, he descended into the well, retrieved his uncle's skeleton to bury it, and then brought his cousin's undecomposed body to the surface. Her body was indeed as intact as a living person's bay. He brought her into his room, placed her on the bed, and cared for her daily as if she was still alive. Next, he found an opportunity to sneak into the lover's room, stealing a set of his clothes to prepare for the next step of the plan. When the lover was away, the scholar put on his clothes and walked past his aunt's room door, deliberately creating a ghostly, blurry appearance. Seeing the familiar figure of her lover but looking strange, the aunt began to grow suspicious. She decided to secretly follow him to see what was going on. She followed him all the way to the wild garden, hiding behind a large rock. From a distance, she saw her lover embracing another woman. She heard her lover whisper to the other woman that he had hidden a dagger under the aunt's pillow, intending to kill her so that they could be together legitimately. The aunt, hidden in the shadows, heard every word of the wicked plan. Anger and fear welled up within her. Returning to her room, she trembled as she searched under her pillow. Indeed, she found a sharp dagger ready, just as she had heard. Her lover's betrayal sent her into a fit of rage. She decided to strike first to eliminate the threat, not giving him a chance to harm her. She secretly put poison in a bowl of ginseng soup, then sweetly brought it to her lover, urging him to drink it while it was hot. The lover did not suspect a thing. The lover was poisoned, writhing in agony. He could not have imagined that he would be poisoned by his own lover, still not understanding what had happened. The aunt pulled out the dagger, pointing it directly at her lover's face. She snarled, saying that he had intended to harm her first, so she was only acting in self-defense. Knowing he was about to die, the lover screamed madly, calling her a wicked bitch. He used his last ounce of strength to grab the dagger and stab her. Both died in a pool of blood. The scholar's plan had succeeded. The treacherous couple had killed each other with their own hands, just as he had planned. The scholar threw the bodies of the two villains into the dry well, then covered it with stones to seal it. He also had the wild garden fenced off, forbidding anyone from approaching. After that, he rightfully took out the land deeds, taking over his uncle's entire estate, becoming the new owner of the house. He only forbade any servants from entering his bedroom. Inside, he still kept his cousin's body, treating her as if she were still alive. A miracle occurred. The cousin's body's belly gradually grew larger. After 10 months of pregnancy, she gave birth to a son for him. He cherished the child like a treasure, often taking him outside to play. Everyone knew he had a son, but no one had ever seen his wife. This peculiar tale recounts that in a certain town, there was a lazy young scholar who relied entirely on his ancestral inheritance, refusing to find a means of livelihood. His wife advised him to go out and find work, if only to contribute to the family. Each time his wife advised him to work, he would become annoyed, only wishing for good fortune to come by itself so he could get rich, believing that his luck had not yet arrived, and when it did, it would be difficult not to get rich. And yet, strangely, he actually waited for it. An old friend who made a living by trading donkeys came to his house one day. His wife complained that he spent all day lounging in bed without knowing where money would come from. Afterward, his wife warmly invited the friend in and prepared tea for him. The friend politely greeted her, even calling her sister-in-law. While talking, the friend mentioned that a merchant wanted to buy several dozen donkeys and he didn't have enough capital alone. He wanted to pool money with a scholar friend to do business together. Hearing this, the scholar cautiously asked how much they could earn. The friend estimated that if everything went smoothly, each of them could earn 30 to 50 taels of silver. The lazy scholar, hearing of earning several tens of taels, though not as much as he hoped, and without needing to exert himself, immediately agreed. His friend bought several dozen donkeys in the neighboring town, and then the two of them set off together for a district near the capital. They herded the donkeys forward together. Along the way, the scholar was of no help at all. He only knew to cover his nose and complain about having to deal with these foul-smelling animals, wondering how he could possibly endure it. His friend tried to comfort him. The journey lasted for over half a month. The two of them herded the donkeys through mountain forest paths. More than half a month later, the scholar returned home, a bag of silver in his hand. His wife was delighted to see her husband back and happily welcomed him into the house. His wife was overjoyed to see so much money earned. She picked up the silver, counted it, and exclaimed that his friend had said they would only earn 30 to 50 taels, but there was over 100 taels here. As the couple was talking, the friend's wife came looking for him. She had heard he was back but couldn't find her husband, so she rushed over to inquire about his news. The scholar looked awkward, hesitating to speak, saying that there were some words that shouldn't be spoken, but not speaking them felt unfair to her. He told his friend's wife a shocking piece of news, that his friend had met a compatible woman in that district and the two had eloped together. In the evening, his wife lay in bed and began to chastise the friend for being so heartless, lusting after beauty, and abandoning his wife and children. He said nothing, only listened. After the two fell asleep in the silent night, he heard a dripping sound. The sound echoed steadily, and the sound of water was right beside the bed. He opened his eyes slightly, tilting his head to look. The strange sound continued to echo. As soon as he looked over, he was horrified to see a person standing right beside the bed, and he couldn't help but let out a piercing scream. Water continuously dripped from the person's entire body. It was his friend who had not returned, his face clearly showing suffering and resentment. The friend, with a face covered in blood and water, came to demand his life, saying that he was very cold and asking why he had treated him that way. The scholar was so scared that his entire body went limp. He knelt on the bed, kowtowing and begging, saying that he was wrong, that he shouldn't have been greedy for money. His pleas woke his wife. She asked what was wrong, and he continuously begged to be spared.
It's okay.
Thinking he was having a nightmare, his wife placed her hand on his shoulder to comfort him, but this only made him scream desperately, begging her not to catch him and to let him go. His wife heard him muttering about his friend and felt that something was wrong. She pressed him for answers, and he replied that his friend wanted to take his life. She pulled up the curtain, but there was no one in the room. Then she looked around. There was clearly no one there. However, on the floor, there was a puddle of water mixed with blood. His wife was utterly puzzled as to where this puddle came from. Seeing this, he became even more terrified, believing that his friend had surely come to claim his life. His wife then questioned him about how he had harmed his friend and where he was. At this point, he stammered out what had happened on the way back, trembling that he had been momentarily foolish. The two had done business very successfully, each earning several tens of taels of silver. He happily said he never expected trading a few donkeys to earn so much money. His friend also advised him to quickly put the money away, saying, "Money shouldn't be exposed." When they reached a desolate area, he developed the idea of murder and robbery, thinking that in this wild, deserted place, no one would know even if he killed and robbed. The two stopped to rest by an old well. He pretended to look down into it intently, then lured his friend closer to the mouth of the well. His friend approached without suspicion. Taking advantage of his friend's distraction, he grabbed the money bag with one hand and forcefully pushed with the other. As soon as he snatched the money bag, he cruelly pushed his friend down the well, his face clearly showing his malice. Fearing his friend was not dead, he threw several large rocks down the well. Afterward, he took all the money and went home, then lied to his friend's wife that her husband had eloped with another woman. The wife was extremely angry upon hearing this, scolding him for his ingratitude and for harming his friend's life, asking how he could commit such a disloyal and ungrateful act. After scolding him, his wife advised him to go to the authorities and confess, saying that she would go with him to the Yamen to confess so that he would no longer be tormented by nightmares. The next morning, he and his wife went to the authorities and confessed everything. The magistrate immediately arrested him. The magistrate then sent people to the old well and retrieved the friend's body. It was indeed as he had described. The wife was called to identify the body. She embraced her husband's corpse, tears streaming down her face. There's an old saying, "Don't enter a temple alone. Don't look into a well with a companion." Indeed, it was not wrong.